Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dirt Nap City, the podcast about interesting dead people. I'm Alex. I'm here with my friend Kelly. Hey, Kelly, what's going on?
Hey, I was just going to tell you, you're from Michigan, and I went there a couple days ago and really enjoyed it. I have to say, it's a great place to be in August.
It is a great place to be in August, and today's subject has a Michigan theme to it too. So if you're a Michigan file, you're in for a treat today. I did want to give you an update though. Remember when you did the Neil Armstrong episode?
Yes.
And my guest was Orville Redenbacher.
Yes, from Ohio.
I think the clue you had given was that he was in the Purdue marching band.
Oh, okay. And was Orville Redenbacher in the...
Do you know that it turns out that Orville Redenbacher was in the Purdue marching band, as was Neil Armstrong? If you go to the Wikipedia page for the Purdue marching band, you'll see notable alumni, and you'll see both of those guys.
Wow.
As notable
at the
alumni.
same time?
No. I think Neil Armstrong was quite a bit younger than Orville Redenbacher.
Oh, really? Really?
Yeah.
Because, Orville Redenbacher, when was he born?
I think he was born in like 1880 or something like that.
Oh, okay. Because Neil Armstrong was born in 1930, I think.
Yeah, they were quite a few years apart.
All right. Well, good to know that.
Orville Redenbacher is one of those guys where possible subject, and then I look it up, and it turns out not that interesting.
He died in 95 and born in 1907,
right? Okay.
And he was considered a food scientist.
Yeah, and that's about all you need to know about Orville Redenbacher. So it's 2 minutes in. That would have been a 2-minute episode.
Ettore Boiardi was a. Here's what's funny is people also search for Ettore Boiardi and Lil Wayne from Orville Redenbacher.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe because they're high and they need some popcorn.
That would actually be a good game where you come up with somebody and then somebody has to guess who the people also searched for.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed Lil Wayne and Orville Redenbacher.
No, that's...
I mean, Boiardi makes sense, but...
Yeah, maybe there's a popcorn song that we're not aware of. From
Michigan, a Michigan connection here.
Yeah, so this guy, it's a 20th century, I would say icon of sorts. Born in 1925 in Detroit.
In Detroit?
Died in 2005 in New Jersey.
All right. 1925, 2005. Was it a car guy?
Car guy.
Let me think. So,
I'll give you a hint.
Yeah, let me have a hint.
This might give you. He has a product named after him that everyone has heard of, but you probably don't know anyone who owns one, and you've probably never seen one in person.
But I've heard of it.
Yeah, pretty much everybody's heard of one.
And is the product, like when you say a product, it's like the proper name of it, or it's like the generic name for it?
The name of it. I mean, it's the brand.
Okay. But and it has to do with cars.
Yes.
Or so I think. And I'm for some reason I keep going to all these. Is it Shelby Cobra?
No, but you're kind of on the right track with a car name.
Okay. Cadillac? I mean, everybody's seen a Cadillac.
Cadillac, I think, was a Native American
tribe?
Warrior. No, I don't think it was a tribe. I think it was a person.
Okay. Everybody's heard of it, but nobody's actually seen one. Was it an actual car?
Yes, that very few people had, but everybody knew who they was.
Was it Edsel?
No, and got real popular in the mid 80s.
Chrysler Cordoba?
From a movie.
Rich Corinthian Leather?
That came out in 1985.
Oh, DeLorean.
John DeLorean.
Ha! Okay. Yeah, the movie. So you were referring to Back to the Future
Back to the
and
Future.
the DeLorean, and also the DeLorean was a. Wasn't there a thing with cocaine and DeLoreans?
So we're going to talk about all that stuff. Yeah.
All
So
right.
this is a perfect example of somebody you've heard of,
Yeah.
and you may be like, one thing about him. Like I knew that Marco Polo brought spaghetti to Italy.
Of course,
Turned
he
out
did.
that was debunked by you a couple weeks ago. But yeah, DeLorean. All you know about him is really the crazy car from Back to the Future and something having to do with cocaine, and that's about it, right? That's
And the
about all I
doors
knew
opened.
too.
The doors were gull
Mhm.
wing doors. They opened upward.
Now you blew my mind a little while back by telling me you had never seen Home Alone. Please tell me you have seen Back to the Future.
I have seen Back to the Future.
Okay.
Yes, Back to the Future is a good movie.
Yeah, all three of them are. Well, two of them are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third one's not great, but it's great. A great suite of movies. Yeah, Back to the Future. You agree with that, right?
I do agree. Yes, and the DeLorean played a big part of it, and so did who's the actor that played the like a little bit of a tie-in here? The actor that played the professor that comes, the scientist
Christopher Lloyd. Yeah,
Christopher Lloyd, who was on Taxi with our boy Andy Kaufman.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
It's all related.
It's all related. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about JDL, and this guy was actually before the Back to the Future and before the cocaine thing. He was actually a very respected and actually very well known businessman and engineer. That if you think, I'll take you back to the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s in America, where cars were a big deal. American cars were a big deal. We hadn't quite had the Japanese cars come over and make a dent. And a few people had cars, German made cars, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, a little bit, but primarily in the U.S., you saw American cars on
it was Chevy,
on the roads. Yeah,
it was GM, Ford.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about all that stuff, and I think you're kind of interested in that car world, right?
Yeah. I'm moderately interested. I also am wondering, because I think you're answering my question right now. I guess I always thought DeLorean was a Italian car.
No.
It was an American car.
Yeah, it was American. It was made by John DeLorean.
Yeah. Okay. I guess his name just sounds Italian. So
yeah, he was actually, his parents were immigrants. I think one of his parents were from Romania and the other were from Hungary. I think they came over. He was first generation, but not Italian.
Okay.
I think he stylized his name to have the capital D and the capital L, but I don't think that's how his name was originally supposed to be. But
it was originally a lowercase d and a capital L.
So he went to a school called Castech for high school, and that's a kind of a famous school in Detroit. It's kind of a technical school, but where a lot of the engineers for these auto companies went to high school. It was a public school, and you could go there and learn a lot about automotive engineering. I mean, that's what Detroit's all about, right?
Sure,
automotive
Motown.
Engineering. Most of the people that live there either have parents or will go that work in the auto industry or will go themselves into the auto industry. And he went to Lawrence Tech, which is a university, a college in the Detroit area where a lot of the auto engineers went. Well, that was interrupted by World War II. He came back, graduated from there in industrial engineering. He was like 23 by the time he had graduated from college because of the war. So he came out of school and he sold life insurance. He was good at it. He was really good at it, but he found it kind of boring. And like I said, his degree was in engineering, but he liked the insurance game because it improved his communication skills. which
Like our
I
boy
think
Dale Carnegie.
Carnegie. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think there's a lot to be said about if you find yourself lacking in communication skills, go and try to sell something for a few months. Even if you're not good at it, you'll develop some of those communication skills. So if you're out there, if you're a young person, you're trying to figure out what to do, go try to sell something.
Yeah.
Sales is a tough game, but you'll realize right away if you like it or don't. And even if you don't, you'll probably get something out of it, and you'll appreciate how hard it is to sell things too.
And if you're looking for something to sell, everybody loves a Patreon membership for Dirt Nap City. That's a great thing. Kind of sells itself.
Would you recommend people go door to door and sell Patreon memberships?
I think as long as you're safe about it. I don't want anybody getting shot or chased off by a dog or anything. But if you go up and first of all, when you knock on the door, take a few steps back away from the door. That's very courteous. And then say, sorry to bother you, ma'am, but you heard of Dirt Nap City, and just see where it goes from there.
If you reach out to us, we'll give you a
starter
lanyard,
kit.
Which includes what? A lanyard, a little name badge.
Yep, a badge with your name on it.
A badge.
And then some literature. We're going to need to get that published. Pueblo, Colorado.
Yeah, that's a good callback, Pueblo, Colorado. So yeah, if you are interested in our starter kit, let us know.
Yeah.
And for every 50,000 memberships, we'll send you $100.
And give you a ride in the DeLorean.
Yeah. And I'll let you know that at the end of this, I'll talk about where you can get DeLoreans today, and it's not too far from where I'm sitting right now.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So after he did the insurance thing, he went to the Chrysler Institute of Engineering. One of his buddies told him to check that place out. It was kind of an in-house engineering school that Chrysler had, and he got his master's degree in automotive engineering and then a job with the Chrysler Corporation. And then while he was doing that, he went to night school to get his MBA. So he was really getting a lot of the stuff that would,
very educated fella.
Yeah, he ended up being very ambitious, educated. But, in Detroit in the 50s, it was all right there for you. If you were interested in cars and you had an engineering degree and a business background, I think the sky was the limit. But he was only at Chrysler for about a year. Again, this is the late 50s. He was offered a job by a company called Packard. You ever heard of a Packard automobile?
I think I have. I have.
If you could picture like FDR driving a car, right?
Big old classic American car.
Luxury cars. They were the really first. It was the American luxury car. If you can,
before there was a Lincoln.
Think about like the Great Gatsby days and those kind of cars that those guys were driving. Cars that probably would, the equivalent of like 80,000-90,000 today.
Yeah. Okay.
Dollars. Yeah. These cars were like, $2,000 or $3,000 back then, which was a lot of money. The super wealthy people. And Packard offered him a job to improve they were working on automatic transmission and trying to make it better. They had it, but it wasn't that great. So Packard was around from 1899 to 1858. Well, I just told you he got there in 1857.
1958.
I mean 1958.
Yeah.
He got there in 1957. So he was at the tail end. But Packard was a very prestigious brand. They came up with the first kind of modern steering wheel as we know it today. They were the first cars that had air conditioning.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these cars had air conditioning like in the 40s and 50s. That was
essential in the South.
Yeah. They were the first cars to have 12-cylinder engines that were kind of patterned after some of the airplane engines.
Also essential in the South.
But you know what? They could not compete with the big three. It was just they were too small time, and they didn't, especially after World War II when people wanted affordable cars or mass producing big quantity. Prior to World War II, I think cars were less ubiquitous, right? They were just kind of for a certain class of people. But after World War II, you saw the rise of the middle class and the suburbs, and people needed cars to get out to the suburbs, and people didn't have the kind of money to buy these expensive Packards. So the big three, when I say the big three, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Chrysler, GM, and Ford.
Right. Chrysler, GM, and Ford. GM being General Motors. Packard's slogan was, "Ask the man who owns one."
Oh.
Which is kind of sexist by today's standards, but it's a pretty cool tagline.
It is.
Like,
you could change it to "ask someone who owns one."
Yeah. And it also is kind of like saying, if you have to ask, you can't afford one.
If you know, you know.
It is. It's basically saying, if you don't know anyone who owns one, you probably can't own one. Well, but if you ask the man who owns one.
So you talk about a new startup or a smaller car company trying to compete with the big three. Did they have a crazy CEO that was always posting things online or putting up on the bulletin boards and attracting attention all the time? Because that might dampen your sales a little bit.
Packard did not. No, I think Packard was like the gold standard of cars prior to World War II, and then I think afterwards they just could not. They weren't
as good at mass production, maybe, or
I don't think
automation.
they were trying to be. I don't think they were trying to be the everyman car, and I think that when you're talking about the millions of cars that the big three were making, they just put them out of business, basically, because then the big three each tried to come up with their luxury cars, and compete, and they would probably could offer the air conditioning and all that modern stuff and still be a little bit cheaper, but still be luxurious.
Economies of scale.
Yeah. So they actually merged with Studebaker in 1953. Packard did.
Okay.
You've heard of a Studebaker?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, our boy wanted out. It wasn't what he thought it was going to be. He was offered a job at General Motors, and they said, "You come and you can go to any one of our 5 divisions at GM if you want. You just pick one."
Okay.
So do you know what the 5 divisions of GM were at the time?
Was there GMC, Chevy, Cadillac, Buick, and Oldsmobile?
You're very close. There was no GMC back in the
GM. I mean, because they're right now you can get a Chevy Tahoe or a I thought it was a GMC.
Yeah, I think that's what they call the truck division now, GMC. Okay. So at the top you had Cadillac,
right?
And then the next
Buick.
In terms of like going down, the next class was Buick, right?
Yep.
Then Pontiac. Then Oldsmobile.
Then Chevy.
Chevrolet, right. So back when we were in college, he used to drive me home from college, and we used to make the drive from Austin to Houston.
Yeah.
And you had a big old car from the 60s back then.
It was a Buick.
What year was that Buick?
67 Buick Electra.
67 Buick Electra, and was it green? Was it?
It was kind of a maroon color.
Maroon, yeah, maroon. I think my grandmother had the same car, but it was green.
Okay,
very similar. That car was big.
It was a very large car. Had a very large motor, and what was great for me about that was I'm not someone who claims to know a lot about fixing cars. But it was pretty easy to change your own oil, to change the oil filter. I think I swapped out the alternator one time, put in my own spark plugs, and it was big enough that you could get to stuff. And I think the big challenge now with cars is because A, they're computerized, so everything has to be hooked up to a computer to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. But then B, it's just hard to get to stuff because the motors are so efficient and tightly packed.
Yeah, I love that car.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
Good time.
1967 Electra.
Yep.
What year did you get rid of that car?
I got rid of that car when I graduated college in 91. So I got it in 87. I had it till 91. And then
did
in 91.
Did you get good money for it? Like, was that a collector?
I think I got $2,000 for it in 91. And
how many miles did that thing have on it?
Not that many. When I got it, it only had like 20 something. It was my grandparents had a friend or a couple that it was their car, and it was their spare car, and the husband had died. It was kind of his pride and joy when he got it in the 60s, and then he died, and so it just sat, and his wife never drove it, but she never sold it either. And then in 85, they sold it to my grandparents for a very cheap price, and my grandparents gave it to me.
It's funny because back then, driving a 1967 car in 1987 seemed like you were driving something out of the Smithsonian. But now, if you drive a car from 2004, I don't think it would feel as dated as that car felt. Like that car felt like
20-year-old car.
An old. It didn't. I mean, maybe because we were only, we weren't even 20 ourselves.
Yeah.
But it just felt like it was something from another time. And I don't think a 2004 car today would feel that old.
Yeah. I mean, it would not have Bluetooth and CarPlay and some of that stuff.
That's about it. It wouldn't look like a relic.
Wouldn't have a back. Okay, so actually, we have a 2008 Odyssey that my in-laws gave us. It's in great shape. Still, there's really no reason to get rid of it. But it doesn't have a backup camera. It doesn't have any of the Bluetooth or anything like that. And here's the worst thing, Alex. If you haven't driven a car recently where you have to actually put a key in, that is so weird now. because all the key fobs, you just hop in, you walk up, the car unlocks, you get in, you start it. To fiddle around in your pocket and look for a key is such a it's just such a weird concept. And I did it for years, and now I hate it. And then to have to use your mirrors when you back up or turn your head, no backup camera.
Does it have a manual
roll down window?
No,
window? even my 67 Buick had electric windows. I don't know if you remember that, but it had electric everything. It had a bench seat that would slide up, down, forward, backwards, had electric windows, had I wish it had been a convertible. And then I don't know if you remember, my dad helped me put in a Alpine stereo or something.
Oh,
so
yeah, I had a
really
good
nice
stereo. We used to listen to Violent Femmes.
That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
And every time we, dear listeners, every time we would go through the town of LaGrange, Kelly would pop in the song LaGrange.
Into the cassette
no matter what
player.
we were doing, we had to stop talking and listen to LaGrange. And there was no LaGrange bypass back then.
You went right through town. You went right past the chicken house.
Good times. So let's get back to our boy, JDL. He goes to Pontiac in 1959 as the assistant to the chief engineer. Pretty good job.
Pretty young age and a good job.
Yeah, by 1961, he's the chief engineer. And as chief engineer at Pontiac, he developed the first American muscle car. First of all, you know what we consider a muscle? What is a muscle car considered?
Is it a Trans Am? Was it the Trans Am?
No, not yet.
Pontiac. Oh, Firebird.
Nope,
not the Firebird.
That came later, also.
I remember the Pontiac Fiero. Do you remember that? That was like a little tiny sports car. That wasn't a muscle car.
My mom.
A muscle car would be like a big V8 engine and probably a manual transmission. In most cases, and
two-door with a lot of horsepower,
rear wheel drive. Is that the classic definition?
I think just a two-door with a lot of horsepower would be.
Well, my Buick had that.
Compact too. Yeah, probably more compact than that. It was the GTO.
Oh, okay.
Pontiac GTO, and it was named the GTO after the Ferrari GTO, which was like the big sports car in Europe. GTO stood for in Italy. The GTO was Gran Turismo Omologato.
Oh yes, domo arigato, Mr. Omologato.
No, that's a different word. That's a Japanese word.
Oh,
but so GTO didn't really mean anything. It was just a knockoff of the Ferrari GTO, the name. Well, the GTO became a huge seller, and then Pontiac became known as a performance vehicle. And John DeLorean was credited with all the success. He became kind of a figure that people knew.
He rock star.
Magazine articles written about
Johnny
him.
Ive at Apple.
Yeah, he was credited with the success of the engineering, the marketing, the rollout, just the whole vibe was kind of took on his personality, and a lot of pieces were written about this guy, and people started to know who John DeLorean was. He was actually promoted to be the head of Pontiac by the time he was 40 years old. He was running the whole division, Pontiac division. In response to the Mustang, which the Mustang came out in the mid 60s, and that was a huge success. Ford came out with the Mustang. So they came out with the Firebird, like you said, as to compete with the Mustang. Now, that wasn't considered a muscle car. That was considered what they call a pony car.
The Firebird or the Mustang?
Both of them.
Pony car.
That kind of car is called a pony car.
Was it more compact, like a little smaller?
Yeah, compact, sporty, affordable also. These weren't expensive cars. These were cars that the average person could get if they wanted to drive a low. But cars were getting smaller. They were getting faster, and they were getting more compact. Right. Well, then he came out with the Grand Prix, and that was the luxury car that Pontiac had, the Pontiac Grand Prix.
Yeah,
we had a we had a lot of these cars. We had a Firebird in the 80s. We had a Grand Prix, I think, in the 70s. The Grand Prix was sporty but affordable. Do you remember the Grand Prix?
Yeah. I remember. I mean, they all kind of blend together. Now, obviously, the Mustang and the Firebird had a pretty distinctive look. And also Firebirds and Camaros looked kind of similar to me.
Well, yeah, Camaro was a different division that came out of the Chevy division. And there was a lot, because they were in the same overall General Motors company, there was a lot of negotiating and a lot of infighting. Well, he would want to develop a car that looked like this, and they'd say, no, you can't do that because that competes too much with the Corvette or the Camaro. So they would have to kind of negotiate so they could have distinct vehicles that were part of that division and part of that particular class. That was a time when there were so many, I long for these days. I've just I just bought a car about a month or two ago, and I've been looking for a while, and I just am not excited about any cars that I see on the road. They all kind of are bland to me. The names aren't exciting. Every name of a car is a letter and a number.
Well, you could have got a Cybertruck.
Sure, I could have. Yeah, you're right. I could have. Which, when we talk about DeLoreans, the actual DeLorean car, I think there's a lot in common with that. But, you go around today and every car is just a letter or a number, has no real personality. They're all kind of the same color on the roads. And they don't, back then there were so many different kinds of cars, and it seemed like there were so many niches. Like, if you want to spend this much, then you go to this division, and that this one had a direct analog. There was a Ford version and a GM version and a Chrysler version of the same car.
They all competed, and they were all kind of the same mileage, the same size engine, just little trade-offs here and there.
And maybe they would compete on things like color, or like one had a spoiler and the other one didn't, but I miss those days, because I don't think, if you look on the roads these days, I think cars are maybe more efficient, maybe they're more aerodynamic, but they're sure not as fun as they used to be.
I agree in most cases. Your typical Honda or Toyota or even Chevy, like, a lot of them look very similar, but there's also like the Rivian, right? That's a pretty cool looking vehicle and has some pretty cool stuff going on. And like I said, the Cybertruck, whether you like it or hate it, it's totally different.
And you're talking about cars that aren't super accessible to most people.
Yeah, I guess a Rivian or a Cybertruck are both, $100K pretty easily.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the days where you could go and you could buy a Pacer or a Vega, so
we had a
Chevy
Pinto.
Nova,
we had a Ford Pinto.
Yeah. or a Eldorado, for crying out loud. Those weren't
Yeah.
expensive cars, but damn it, they had personality. You know,
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah.
Was it
I mean,
Trevor Linhart used to have was it a Rascal? Was it a Rascal? What was the car that had the two seats in the back?
oh no, that was a
Wasn't it a
it was a
Rascal?
Subaru Brat.
Brat.
Yeah.
Brat. Remember Trevor Linhart?
Was that Laura Linhart's brother?
Sure. Yeah. If you're listening, hey man.
Hey Trevor, hey Laura.
They had two seats with like handles in the back.
Yeah, they faced backwards.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
they don't make
the
anything
Subaru
like that
Brat.
anymore. The
Well,
Brat.
now, actually, I do think that either Kia or one of those newer companies that makes vehicles has a sort of Baja looking, like mini truck that looks like a car, but has the bed of a truck. So
I think
Hyundai.
the crossover cars have ruined all cars.
Well, and also, I just recently rode in a friend of mine. He has an Audi, an all-road. Have you seen those? They're like station wagons, but they're really sporty.
Mhm.
I always thought I wanted one of those, and then that was up in Detroit, actually. I rode in it, and it is slow, low to the ground. I have to say, as an old man, I like having a car that's higher up off the ground for me. Now we had a Pinto. I was just going to name this. The only Pontiac my family ever owned was a station wagon, and I don't remember what their station wagon was called, but it was a big brown station wagon. And I remember like you could put the back window down. You know, it kind of would like it would go down, and we had a yellow duck sticker on it. And
That's so you could moon the car behind you.
Yeah, yes. And then, or just throw something out of it.
Sure.
And then, do you remember a couple of other Pontiacs? The Fiero. I remember seeing that for the first time and thinking that was you had one?
Yeah. My mom had one.
Was it fun to drive?
Yeah. Well, I don't think I drove it. I wasn't old enough yet, but it had the headlights that popped up.
Yeah, it was like a little tiny Italian sports car kind of thing. And then here's what I think ruined Pontiac. Is Pontiac even a thing anymore?
I think it is. You
remember the Aztec?
Yes. I remember the Pontiac Aztec. I think actually in Breaking Bad, I think they're driving.
That's what Walter White drove was an Aztec. Yeah.
Yeah.
They tried to pick the loserest car possible.
Exactly. And I think in the first season of Survivor, that's what they won. In addition to the $1 million, they won a Pontiac Aztec. They were trying to give that street cred, but it was really ugly.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
But again, like the Cybertruck, they did something different. Like they made something that looked completely different than any
I was
going to
say, if the Aztec was on the road today, it would really stand out. It might even, be attractive compared to everything that's out there now. Everything's just so bland now.
Yeah.
Anyways, so DeLorean, he's on this run. He's got the Grand Prix, he's got the Firebird, he's putting Pontiac on the map, and he got to be a really popular guy, traveled the world, but he was also like back in this late 60s, business guys all kind of looked the same. They kind of wore the dark suit and the tie, and he dressed casually, which everyone does now, but nobody
but
was
at that
doing
time
in
you
the
didn't
60s.
do that.
He was kind of known as the rebel businessman. He rocked sideburns. He wasn't conservative looking at all. He had sideburns and he wore like shirts that were unbuttoned with a chain, and the hair
dirty hippie style.
No, not at all. Very like European.
More
what I
like
mean?
Italian. Macho.
Very, very like money, but he was friends with like Johnny Carson and hung out with people he was an engineer, but he really was a popular guy. He was having affairs with like Raquel Welch, and
wow.
So he was getting known. And then at that point he was promoted to head up Chevrolet, which was another division. It was their flagship division of General Motors. It was where they sold the most cars from. It was price-wise, it was kind of the most affordable division, but it was by far where the bulk of their market share was. And now he was making like $200,000 a year, which today would be like $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Which, it just goes to show you how CEO salaries have gone out of control, because that's about what CEOs would make back then, and that was a lot. And today CEOs are making 100 times that sometimes.
Yeah.
But so Chevrolet was kind of not doing great. This was the late 60s. They were plagued by a car called the Corvair.
Oh yeah,
Corvair?
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that car was known. It was real popular. In fact, it was car of the year in 1960. But by 1965, it had all kinds of problems. Like things like they had a engine cooling fan belt that would sometimes just fly off.
Oh yeah, I hate when that happens.
The engine would overheat all the time, and it would get bad mileage. And then what really killed it was there was a guy named Ralph Nader that wrote a book called Unsafe at Any Speed.
Yeah. He was sort of the first or one of the first consumer advocates.
Exactly. So he wrote this book called Unsafe at Any Speed, and it focused primarily on the Corvair, which he said was like the least safe car ever built.
Wow.
And now that was later debunked. A lot of that stuff was debunked. DeLorean didn't have anything to do with that. He was coming in as a result of
that already existed. And,
and that
he
was
coming in to fix it. Yeah.
He came in at the end of all that. They had a car called the Chevy Nova.
Oh yeah,
that they were trying to roll out. That had to have a bunch of redesigns. There was a lot of recalls, millions and millions of cars.
And their launch in Latin America didn't go well because Nova means won't go.
That's an urban legend, much like your Marco Polo spaghetti.
What?
That's not true. Not true.
Nova doesn't mean won't go.
It does mean that, but it's Spanish-speaking people know the difference between. In fact, they call the celestial thing. They call it then a Nova. Also, and in fact, the Nova actually sold a lot in Mexico. And
so if in like let's say Uzbekistan they came out with a car called the Won't Go, would you buy the Won't Go? Because you know the difference between Won't Go and Won't Go.
Sure. It's a myth. Myth. It sold very well, like in Latin America. The Nova. It was actually a very popular car.
Still popular.
But it is true that in a lot of cross-cultural type of training, they teach that as a classic example of a faux pas, a marketing faux pas.
Yeah.
It's not true that it was a faux pas, but it gets people thinking, I suppose, that that's not what you should
be careful what words you put together.
Yeah, even though it was fine. They had no detrimental effects at all. So that was the late 60s. They were having problems. By 1971, John DeLorean had Chevy matching the entire Ford Motor Company in sales, just that one division. He rescued it with cars like the Nova and the Vega. Those were really, we make fun of those cars, but they were very affordable. Everyone had them. And, if you're dominating the market share, you're doing something right. These were very affordable cars that probably were good enough back then. Now, this is right before the Japanese cars came out and kind of rocked the world of the big three. But in the 70s, you can kind of get away with as long as they weren't dangerous, you could kind of get away with crappy cars,
Yeah, they didn't have to be, the fit and finish. Sometimes you see people now taking like a credit card and putting it between the seams of a car, and this tolerance is way too loose, and this needs to be tighter, and too many decibels in the cabin, all that stuff.
No, a lot of them were probably rough drafts, but they were fine. As long as they got you from point A to point B and they didn't blow up, they were fine. That's what we rode back.
Kind of my philosophy in life.
I mean, we barely had seatbelts back then.
True.
We were just doing.
You had your mom that would stick her arm out when she put on the brakes.
Your '67 Electra had seatbelts, but only lap belts. Yeah,
only lap belts.
And I don't think they retract. I don't think they retracted.
They were just one size fits all.
They were the kind you have like on a a ride, like a roller coaster.
Oh yeah, yeah. You put it on and then you kind of cinched it up
Yeah.
and I don't think there was even one in the middle seat in the front or the back. So because that car would hold 7-8 people pretty easily,
Yeah.
but only 4 seatbelts.
Oh, you and I together, just the two of us in that car, there was room for 7 or 8, 9,
Yeah,
10
I
other
remember
people.
you laying in the back taking a nap on the way home. till we stopped in LaGrange, and then it was all bets off.
All right. So by 1972, DeLorean was the vice president of all cars and truck production for all of General Motors.
Wow.
He had worked his way up. So that was by 72. He was not even 50 years old yet.
Wow.
And he was running all that stuff in 1970, and everyone thought this guy's going to be running the company in a couple of years. He was just on, but in 1973 he left General Motors. The rumor was that he got fired, but nobody really knows what exactly happened. His quote from back then was, he said, "I want to do things in the social area. I have to do them, and unfortunately, the nature of our business just didn't permit me to do this as much as I wanted." Don't know what that means, the social area.
Vague. Well, he wanted to start Facebook.
But the next year, he started his own company, the DeLorean Motor Company. So he came up with a concept car called the DeLorean Safety Vehicle, or the DSV. It was a two-seater with a stainless steel body and gull wing doors. So that's the design. Never really got out of that design, the classic design that you picture when you picture DeLorean.
He called it the safety vehicle?
DeLorean Safety Vehicle, DSV.
See, I thought safety sounds like the opposite of fast, right? Yeah. And so I thought that it would have been called like, the DeLorean lightning bolt or the DeLorean, cold plunge or something.
Well, I think they called it the DSV. I don't think they.
But still, the word safety was its middle name.
Maybe because it looked unsafe and people had to, they had to put that in there. But, it was a fiberglass car, but then it was the stainless steel shell. You could picture this, right?
Yeah, I remember what they look like.
And the gull wing doors that would open not side to side, but they'd open straight up.
Yeah.
Right? You'd push a button and they'd come up. You probably have to get out of the way though, or it would hit you, right?
Right.
Have you ever seen one in person?
I don't remember if I have, so I'm going to say no.
I think I have, maybe at a state fair or something.
Okay, not like out driving around though.
I don't think I've ever seen one driving around. And every time I think I've seen a couple times, and every time I see it, the doors are already up.
Yeah, it's like in that look at me position.
Right, exactly. Now, he made these, he didn't make them in America. He made them in Ireland. He had a plant in Northern Ireland, actually in Belfast. He had a manufacturing plant, but it took 7 or 8 years to actually get this car produced. He started his company in 1973 and didn't sell any until 1981. There's all kinds of production delays.
Yeah.
Problems with the plant, problems with the workers, problems with, it was just one delay after another. In 1980, when they were getting ready to roll this thing out, American Express came up with this they were a gimmick, I guess, marketing gimmick, where they were going to sell a 24 karat gold version of the DeLorean. They were going to only make 100 of them, and it was going to sell for $85,000 in 1980.
Yeah. So
that'd be about $340,000 today.
Solid gold.
And they were only going to make 100, and they were going to be worth a bunch.
Collector's items.
Yeah, it was going to coincide with, I think that's when American Express developed the gold card.
The gold card, of course.
So it was to tie in with that. They were only going to make 100. They only sold 4.
Oh, so these weren't like giveaways. These were ones they were going to try and sell, special edition.
Right. They were going to only going to make 100 and going to be super rare, and they only sold 4.
It was a DeLorean with gold plating.
24 karat gold plated. Yeah.
I wonder how much gold is on that. Like how thin that gold, like if you scrape it off.
I don't know.
They sold
But,
4
They only sold 4,
out of the
which
100.
makes me think they only made 4. Like, I doubt they made 100 and then there's 96 of them still sitting there.
Yeah, still in the showroom, waiting to be.
I bet you they made them to order, or maybe at least they made the outside to order, the frame or the body. I mean, the production delays. They ended up not selling any until 1981. They made 7,000, and they only by 1982 they had only sold half of them.
Regular DeLoreans.
It was a disaster. Yeah. And
Wow.
The company was $175 million in debt. That's 1980s money, which should be, almost, that's probably 600 million in debt today. Time Magazine in 2017 listed it as one of the 50 worst cars of all time. And it wasn't even really that fast. They used to say that it would go 0 to 60 in 8 seconds. All the magazines that tested it was more like 10 seconds.
Okay.
Which isn't super fast. I don't think that competes real well with some of the fast cars from back then. So it was a
safety car though.
Unmitigated disaster. And it took almost a decade to do this after he just had success after success after success at GM.
This was supposed to be his big finish, and it turned out to be a mess.
So this is the early 80s. 1981 is when all this was happening. Well, in October of 1982, he was arrested. He was videotaped in a sting operation for agreeing to bankroll a cocaine smuggling operation. What had happened was he was in a hotel in Los Angeles. The FBI, he was meeting with who he didn't know was the FBI. And they had 60 pounds of cocaine. The deal was that he was going to finance a deal to sell 220 pounds of cocaine, which was like the street value was like 24 million, which would be like 80 million today.
Wow.
Which is about half of what, they lost. So, I mean, this is real money. This is big time money. Well, you know what happened?
Hold on. My phone is ringing. Let me just send it to voicemail. What happened?
So how this was all set up was it was a former neighbor of his who was busted for cocaine dealing, and he was making a deal with the government and for a reduced sentence. So what he did, this guy Jim Hoffman was his former neighbor, and he knew that DeLorean needed money like quick because his business was in such trouble. So he called him and he said, "Hey, buddy, I know a way you can make quick money. I know you're in some hard times. I know a way you can make some quick money. I got a bunch of cocaine, and if you just give me, I'll give you this kind of return on this." Well, I know you're not a lawyer, but that's entrapment, right?
Yeah.
You can't just approach somebody with a nefarious deal, trying to prey on their vulnerabilities, knowing that they're in financial trouble, and then arrest them for trying to break the law when you try to set up this shady deal. And they proved that successfully. This guy had no criminal history. The guy who was trapping him had all kinds of criminal history.
Okay.
He had really good lawyers, and but the trial it was very public. It took a couple of years.
Yeah, and
he was finally acquitted, but after his acquittal, a reporter asked him if he planned on resuming his career in the auto industry, and he said, "Would you buy a used car from me?"
Ooh, wow!
That's like, yeah, my reputation is screwed. It's over.
Yeah.
Even a few minutes ago, the only thing you knew about the guy was something with cocaine, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then in 1985, he was indicted for tax evasion. Well, he was acquitted on that too, So he never actually was convicted of any crimes. But he was always kind of in this position of being very much in debt, needing a lot of money, and then having
Had his
and then,
reputation tarnished.
Yeah, he now the DeLorean name, the DeLorean Motor Company name, was actually bought by a company out of Humble, Texas, right here in North Houston.
Okay, yeah,
that provides parts and repairs for DeLorean, and they bought the name, so now they own the name of the DeLorean Motor Company, and they offer for those 7,000 DeLoreans that are still out there. And I'm sure that if you have one, you probably take pretty good care of it, just because there's not very many out there.
Yeah.
Back to the Future came out in 1985, which is pretty much at his low point, which was really cool. He didn't have anything to do with pitching that. I mean, they came up with the idea. They thought it was a cool, futuristic looking car.
Yeah.
And he was really grateful that they did that, kind of putting his name back out there
in a positive way.
Let's face it, if it wasn't for that movie, we might have forgotten all about that car.
Yeah, yeah.
And it might have hit a dead end, one of our dead end episodes. But that movie kind of gave it a nostalgic. Like, we all think fondly of the DeLorean. It was kind of a kooky thing, but like I said at the beginning, everyone knows it. No one really knows anybody that had one, but it's kind of a relic of the time. In 1999, he finally declared bankruptcy. He had a 400-acre estate in Bedminster, New Jersey, and sold it in 2000. And I don't know if the name Bedminster rings any bells for you, but he sold it to a guy who turned it into a golf course, and that guy's name was Donald J. Trump.
Wow. Okay.
So he bought his property
estate
and turned it into a golf course. So that Bedminster, which is one of the golf courses that Trump's always going to, that used to be DeLorean's house.
Wow. Okay.
And DeLorean's tombstone in New Jersey has on his tombstone, it has a picture of a DeLorean with the gull wing doors open, like an angel.
Oh, nice.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. Classy. Yeah.
There's a what do you call that kind of music? Like house music, I guess, band called Neon Neon.
Okay.
It has a concept record called Stainless Style.
Stainless Style.
It's a concept record about the life of John DeLorean.
Whoa.
And about the wives and lives. I guess he was married 4 times, and like I said, that doesn't include the numerous affairs with, like, women like Raquel Welch. And I think there's a song on the album called Raquel Welch. There's another song called Michael Douglas that's about him sitting by a pool, from his point of view, sitting by the pool with Michael Douglas, talking about what kind of plastic surgery he wants.
And this will probably be turned into a musical sometime soon.
Well, the guy that wrote the music for Neon Neon, he says, it's been a pleasure to write about a specific subject and to think about various scenarios relating to his life and imaginary scenarios that may have happened to him on the way. So musically, we've been writing in a style that personally mirrored his kind of fast, cocktail-driven lifestyle. And it's a very frivolous electro-pop record about the first Playboy engineer. And maybe the only. Like, I was trying to think of who was the second Playboy engineer. Maybe Zuckerberg.
Or
maybe
Steve Jobs.
Stevie. Was he a Playboy, though?
No, not really. He was a weirdo.
Yeah, who's a Playboy engineer?
Musk?
Is he an engineer, though?
I think he has a car company and a space company. And
I guess, is he the second or just a Playboy engineer?
A Playboy engineer.
Well, it's kind of a small group of people.
Yeah. If the audience out there knows of any Playboy engineers worth noting, please send us a note, not at dirtnapcity.com.
But he was a particular kind of guy, right? A particular kind of guy that you can kind of picture without ever having seen a picture of him. You can kind of picture his vibe, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of 70s fast car, fast women.
Yep.
Yeah. But But you know, also I think probably unfairly maligned, maybe because his car was goofy and his company didn't do well and he was mixed up in the drug string, but it's actually a very successful
Yeah, if you
early
look at
success.
the first 3/4 of his career, you know,
Dude,
it was textbook.
if he had not quit and become head of GM, he would then have had a life like Lee Iacocca or something, and he would just be an old auto executive that we knew about, but he wouldn't have had that same kind of crazy end to his life.
And he probably wouldn't have been featured on Dirt Nap City.
Exactly, because that's where the interesting part comes in. Remember, the qualifications to be on this show not only have to be dead, you have to be interesting. And sorry, Orville Redenbacher, you didn't make the cut, man. The Purdue marching band ain't going to cut it. And your 60 kinds of popcorn seeds. If I put it this way, if I've fallen asleep reading your Wikipedia page, you ain't going to get on the show, man.
Wow. Well, John DeLorean, here's to you, man.
Here's to you. Go wing doors open.
John DeLorean, you built a dream. Silver machine on time's wide stream. Fast as lightning, sharp as your steam. Cutting through life like a wild machine. From Wall Street toys to stainless steel, you played the cards with a gambler's seal. Chasing the future with fire at heel. Your life a highway, unreal, surreal. Drive fast, stay free, John DeLorean. Burn rubber while you're living your dreams. May the road be open wide, and the jail bars stay outside. Drive fast and let your spirit gleam. Deals and wheels on the midnight run, under moonlight chasing the sun. Restless heart, always having fun. Careful, John, don't come undone. From GTOs to the DMC, changing the world with your legacy. Your story's a twist of irony. Oh, John, you live so wild and free. Drive fast, stay free, John DeLorean. Burn rubber while you're living your dreams. May the road be open wide, and the jail bars stay outside. Drive fast and let your spirit gleam. On the midnight run, under moonlight chasing the sun. Restless heart, always having fun. Careful, John, don't come undone. From GTOs to the DMC, changing the world with your legacy. Your story's a twist of irony. Oh, John, you live so wild and free. Drive fast, stay free, John DeLorean. Living your dreams. May the road be open wide, and the jail bars stay outside. Drive fast and let your spirit gleam. Drive fast, stay free, John DeLorean. Burn rubber while you're living your dreams. May the road be open wide, and the jail bars stay outside. Drive fast and let your spirit